Hey guys, Zachary here from HWM Singapore and HardwareZone.com. We're back here with another video for you, just fresh off our last preview of the Huawei Mate X. And as you know, today is the global launch of the Huawei P30 series here in Paris. And of course, I've got my hands on the P30 Pro. So I know you want to look at this phone, and so do I. So let's get cracking. Now, right out of the box, the P30 Pro is a large phone. It has a 6.47-inch display and weighs about 192 grams. Now, this makes it larger and heavier than the Mate 20 Pro before it, and it's actually also larger and quite substantially heavier than even the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. So trust me when I say you're gonna feel it. It's quite a hefty phone. Design-wise, nothing much has changed over the past year. You still get curved glass front and back with a metal frame around it. The P30 Pro is a pretty minimalist phone. There's only buttons on one side, and the only ports you get are the USB-C at the bottom and the dual SIM tray. Now, Huawei is still sticking to their proprietary nano memory slot for the phone, but hopefully, just like the Mate 20 Pro, when you buy one, they're probably going to give you a memory card for free anyway, so it's not something you should worry about. An interesting thing about Huawei is they seem to have a thing for invisible speakers. If you remember the Mate 20 Pro, they tried to hide the speaker inside the USB port. For the P30 Pro, the phone doesn't even have a speaker. What it does have is a magnetic levitation acoustic display. Fancy speak for saying we vibrate the screen like a diaphragm to produce sound. Now, however the sound is made might not be a problem. The only thing you and I probably care about is it loud? For a phone with such a large display, the P30 Pro unfortunately only has a Full HD Plus resolution. I was kind of hoping that Huawei would keep the 2K Plus resolution that we saw on the Mate 20 Pro, but can't always have everything. In the rear, it's another gradient design. It's shiny, it's pretty. Yes, it's a fingerprint magnet camera section over there, as you can see. But I think the wow factor of gradient backs have sort of sailed. Huawei can be credited for starting this whole trend when they launched the P20 Pro last year. But yeah, now it's just another color. Actually, this isn't even a color anymore. This is called Breathing Crystal. Maybe I can use it to meditate. What you should focus on is this part over here, which brings us to the main event. Now, the P series for Huawei is where they introduce new camera technologies for their devices, and the P30 Pro is a beast. Before we get into that, the rest of the phone carries more or less the same technologies as the Mate 20 Pro, which means it runs on the Kirin 980 processor. It has 40-watt supercharge, 15-watt fast wireless charging, reverse charge capabilities. It has an in-screen fingerprint sensor, although now it's in a better location at the bottom of the screen. I'm not really sure that if this is updated over the Mate 20 Pro, but what I've noticed is that I don't actually have to put a lot of pressure for it to activate. I can just leave my finger there and the screen unlocks, which is great. It also has face unlock, but if you notice, there's only a single camera on the top of the phone, so you're not going to have the advanced 3D face unlock of the Mate 20 Pro. So I don't think you should use this feature as a way to secure your phone. One thing to note though, the front camera is nothing special, but it has been updated to a 32 megapixel sensor with HDR, but otherwise nothing much has changed. So now let's get to the fun part. The P30 Pro is Huawei's first 4-camera smartphone. What 4 cameras? As a 40 megapixel main camera, 20 megapixel ultra wide, 8 megapixel telephoto, and a new 4th time of flight camera. What's a time of flight camera? It basically captures depth information to give your pictures a more dynamic blurring and bokeh effects depending on how near or far objects in the background are. But if you think that this is basically just taking the triple camera from the Mate 20 Pro and adding a 4th time of flight camera, you're wrong. Now I'm genuinely excited about the P30 Pro because this is not just a camera with a megapixel bump. It's not just a wider field of view or play around with aperture numbers again. There's actually what Huawei calls a world's first super spectrum sensor in this phone. And just a little bit of background before we go into that, every digital camera in existence today, not just for phones but your proper compacts to DSLRs, at least that I know of, uses image sensors with an RGB array to capture light. RGB for red, green, blue. Back in the early days of digital cameras, I'm talking about 1 and 5 megapixel digital cameras back then, manufacturers actually experimented with other colors like cyan, magenta, and yellow. For whatever reason, like any format war, RGB sensors won, which is why every other camera today is an RGB sensor. The Huawei Super Spectrum sensor in the P30 Pro replaces green with yellow. So this phone actually has an RYB sensor. Is it actually any better? I don't know. Is it just a gimmick? I don't know either. But it's different and it's going to be interesting to test it out. 2 things come to mind. With the additional yellow channels, your daylight photos would probably look a lot punchier because there's more red in them. Huawei is also claiming that the sensor is 40% more light sensitive, which means that night shots are going to work way better as well. The P20 Pro and the Mate 20 Pro already had really good night capabilities, but with this new sensor, it could push it even further. If you went into the phone and gone into manual mode, you can actually see you can change the ISO from 50 all the way up to 409,600. That's 400,000 ISO on a mobile phone. That's crazy. Now the other thing Huawei can claim for world's first is a device with a periscope zoom. They are not the only ones. Oppo announced similar lens design back at MWC, but the P30 Pro is going to be the first device that you can buy that has such a zoom lens. Why a periscope zoom lens? Well, it's physically impossible to keep adding thicker and thicker lenses onto phone devices without the camera budge, going crazy. So what a periscope zoom does is it installs a longer zoom lens parallel to the length of the phone. So what you get with the P30 Pro is a 5 times optical zoom with optical image stabilization, up to 10 times hybrid zoom, which is Huawei's technology of combining AI image stabilization and image cropping. But most amazingly, this phone goes up to 50 times digital zoom. Now on paper, that's crazy. But if it doesn't work, then it's pointless, because if you zoom all the way up to 50 times and everything's shaking all over and you can't even get a proper picture, then it's rubbish. But this actually works. So here I'm in a conference room. I've put the P30 Pro's box all the way to the other side. This is what it looks like to zoom in with the P30 Pro. This is 5 times optical zoom, 10 times hybrid zoom. Now let's go crazy. 50 times zoom. And guys, this is handheld, by the way. I'm basically holding it. It can actually focus, and if you notice, it can even identify the picture as text. There you go. A handheld 50 times zoom picture, which is by all means serviceable. Okay guys, that's all the time I have. I'm going to leave you here so I can take this baby out for a spin. Don't forget to check out hardwarezone.com for more in-depth news and reviews of the P30 Pro.